To me, this is about the mosaic of the team and making sure that across all of the people we're hiring, we have people with different levels of experience and different levels of background. Also, in some cases, having people who may not have as much experience, but they're cloud native, that they've learned how to do security in the cloud. That's actually a benefit when you're trying to do everything kind of cloud-based.
SC Media and our Diamond sponsor Darktrace are proud to present this month's CISO Stories program. Each month, the CISO Stories program explores a cybersecurity topic selected by the Cyber Risk Alliance's CISO community and provides content that examines that topic from a variety of perspectives. Hosted by Todd Fitzgerald, best-selling author of CISO Compass, the CISO Stories weekly podcast features content powered by 1,100-plus members of the Cyber Risk Alliance's CISO community. Listen to previous CISO Stories podcast episodes at CISOstoriespodcast.com.
Cybersecurity Collaborative is a unique membership community enabling cybersecurity leaders to work together in a trusted environment. To learn more, visit CISOstoriespodcast.com/CSC. Hi, I'm your host, Todd Fitzgerald, and this week we welcome Larry Lidz, VP and CISO Cisco CX Cloud at Cisco Systems. Welcome, Larry.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hey, good to see you again. So tell me, Larry, we've known each other for quite a while. What attracted you to the cybersecurity field?
I got into the cybersecurity field what now feels like ages ago. So in the early days of cybersecurity, what really has been most exciting for me and what led me into it originally and has kept me there is that I love learning. I'm a passionate learner. It's what I wake up every morning trying to come up and learn new things. And cybersecurity is a field that's great about that because we as professionals always need to adapt to what the threat actors are doing, which means that what we did yesterday is not going to work today and certainly not what we need to do tomorrow. So that's something that's always been exciting to me is to learn new stuff, do different things. And that's what brought me here.
Well, good. I see you're a reader like I am here. We have a lot of books and, most of them we've read, and some of them we've read a couple times. And I find that, as people are trying to learn stuff, it's too easy today to just go out to the internet and get the answer or plug it into a generative AI engine and get the answer. But you really get that depth when you really take the time on a particular subject and read about it.
Yeah, I think my early days in security were all learned through reading Nima Snyder-Seaboth's book on Unix system administration, and then Unix security, and then kind of building on top of that. The world's a different place than it was back in the 90s. But I do think that it is important as you're growing your career in security to get into the depths and actually understand the specifics of what you're talking about at a great level of detail. I love reading. It's a great way to do it, whether it's books, whether it's articles. And then obviously the other thing that really resonates as a way to learn things is talking to other people, whether that's listening to podcasts like this or watching podcasts like this, or whether it's the conversations with folks. I think that's a really critical part of how everyone needs to build their career in the cybersecurity industry.
I mean, there's other podcasts besides this one? I thought this was the only one that you'd need.
It's the only one that matters, Todd.
As a writer of the CISO Compass book, I have a new book out now called the Privacy Leader Compass. I love it. Love to hear it that people love to still read books. So today we're going to be talking about building the talent within our organizations, and you've in the last couple of years during the pandemic, you built a team from 5 people to about 80 people in the cloud security space. And this month we're talking about cloud security, and I thought this would be just so appropriate to talk about staffing and, building those teams. So what strategy did you go about trying to get cloud security people, obviously a very specialized talent?
Yeah, I think first of all, one of the things that was phenomenally interesting about this job was we at Cisco were looking to make our customers' lives easier. And having been a customer of Cisco's for many, many years, I understand the pain that can be sometimes interacting with a large corporation like Cisco. And we wanted to provide a single pane of glass for customers to really understand what they have and how to make of Cisco's equipment and how to get the best use of it. So if you think about this as being kind of a cloud environment that's a front door for customers to interact with the company, trust becomes really important from the get-go. If you don't trust the front door, you're not going to trust the rest of the house. So we set a really high bar out of the gate for what we're trying to do from a security perspective. And as you mentioned, everything that we're building is a cloud environment. This all sits in back-ended in cloud environments and such as AWS and a little bit of GCP. And it is always, it is people interact with it as a cloud environment. So this meant, in fact, the difficult challenge that I had ahead of me when I joined was building a team that was able to secure that environment to a really high level of trust in a really short period of time, so that we didn't run into issues as we were getting ready to release this and start getting customers onboarded and using it and accessing these sorts of information. And as you implied, cloud security professionals are really hard to hire. My previous job, I can remember having a single position out there for a cloud security person. We probably interviewed people for 9 months before we found a candidate who even came within the realm of what we wanted. And here I was trying to hire. When I joined, I didn't know what the number was. I knew it was more than 5, but I didn't know what it was going to be, and ended up being in the 80, 90 range in a short period of time. So it's been a fun and interesting challenge as we did that. And I think we've done a great job of getting a phenomenal team who comes from all sorts of different backgrounds and different perspectives in order to be able to protect the environments for our customers and keep them, keep what they're entrusting us with safe. There were a number of tactics that we did, and I think one of the things that I'm really fortunate about. Cisco is a company that puts people first. And when we started, I was doing most of the hiring during this in the pandemic, so offices weren't part of the conversation. We knew going in that people weren't going to be in the office anytime soon. And very quickly we aligned that one of the key things that we wanted to do was take advantage of finding the best talent that we could wherever that talent was situated. So we didn't want to restrict ourselves based on you need to be within X miles of an office or something along those lines. The trick on that is what we do care about and did care about and do care about is the time zones and the countries that they're in. So we're going to build a global team, take advantage of time zones to have people working on things that need to be 24 hours a day, leveraging the various time zones that they're in with intentionality. But whether they're in city A or city B didn't matter. So that was, step one in the process was kind of taking that approach to start scaling things out.
Where did you find the most people? If you were to draw a map, and where would you say most that your people were coming from?
So we have a mix of people, and there's 4 main geographies that we've hired people in my team. We started with folks in the U.S. because we have a large U.S. presence. A lot of the myself and the people I work for are U.S. based. We also had a lot of engineers that we're going to be working with, developers who were in Poland and India. So for lacking any better reason, those were our initial places. Let's start with those 3 countries. We found that India actually has a lot of challenges for hiring cybersecurity professionals. It's a really tough job market that's changing rapidly. The time that it takes after you make an offer to someone before they onboard can be quite some time, and then they may not stay around. So we thought more holistically around the location. We still definitely have folks in India, but we've actually started using Australia as well as a good location. US, Poland, Australia works really well for running 24-hour services, and then US, Poland, India for things where they're interacting more directly with the developers.
What were some of those things that lengthen that time in India to hire people?
In general, the expectations that companies have when they hire people is that there's a long period of notice after they give their resignation before they stop. And it depends a little bit on the individual and so forth. But we had places where we had made offers and it was going to be 2 to 3 months before they start, versus in the US where generally it'd be 2 to 3 weeks before they would start. And then if you have someone who's there for, it takes 3 months after the job offer to hire the person, then if they don't stick around for, maybe it takes 6 months for them to get up to speed on what they're doing to be fully effective in their job, understand the cloud environments, be able to execute on things. And then if they leave within a few weeks of, that, which we had somebody who didn't stick around very long, one of our first hires in India, you've invested a lot of time to try to get the talent on board and they didn't stay around. So that was actually really not an ideal experience from that perspective. And it's just because the salaries are increasing in India so quickly and because it's such a competitive market, particularly for security people, that was a struggle for us.
What sort of talent were you looking for?
Yeah. So holistically, if you look across the organization we have a little bit of everything that you would think of from a security perspective. Cisco has a lot of great security expertise that we can leverage and pull from other areas. But historically, a lot of the Cisco expertise has been around routers and switches and things that go to customers' networks. And particularly 3 years ago, there weren't as many parts of Cisco that were really leaning into the cloud environments. So when we needed that cloud expertise, we needed to pull more from the outside world. I was very thoughtful around having a mix of people who understand Cisco's culture combined with the outside perspectives. But we're talking about security, cloud security engineers and architects, people who do identity and access management. We're a product team, an engineering team that is writing code. So we need people who understand application security and how we drive that. People who can have awareness and training experience to help teach people how to write code securely in a highly secure environment. We have an offensive security team. So we've got both pen testers and red teams who are dedicated to attacking our environments, a SOC and vulnerability management teams. Then we also have compliance. And when you think about things like SOC 2 reports and FedRAMP and other schemas and frameworks and certifications to help customers have trust, that's also very much part of what we do. And then all of this needs to be wrapped in a good understanding of risk and how to prioritize it. So if you think about it, it's really a full stack security team thinking about all of the standard things you would expect a security team to do. Though the specifics of how we execute on that is very different because everything is through the lens of the cloud. We don't need people whose expertise and experience is in how you protect data centers, because by and large, we don't have things in Cisco data centers. We've got things in AWS. So there's some slightly different angles on those skills. It's kind of, when we were thinking about things like job descriptions and we were posting jobs, it was almost like we need a such and such in the cloud in the job title, which of course cuts down the talent pool that you're trying to tack into, and particularly a really hyper competitive security job market.
Would you find in terms of as you're looking at different talent out there in terms of their experience level, how many years experience would you say that you're targeting?
It varies a lot. And to me, this is about the mosaic of the team and making sure that across all of the people we're hiring, we have people with different levels of experience and different levels of background. Also, in some cases, having people who may not have as much experience, but they're cloud native, that they've learned how to do security in the cloud. That's actually a benefit when you're trying to do everything kind of cloud-based. Assuming it's complemented with other skill sets, such as how do you do all of the security stuff that folks like you and I have been doing this for decades, understand as well. So it was that mosaic of it. And to me, this also ties into one of the biggest challenges we had, which is that diversity is really, really important when we think about how we're building the cybersecurity skill set and the skill set of the future. The threat actors are infinitely diverse. They come from all over the world. They come from every single background, every single perspective you might might have. And if we don't have an equally diverse team, we're going to be behind the ball, and they're going to think of things that we're not going to have thought of how to protect. So building up that diversity in the team as we were building out was really a very critical thought, and not easy. And particularly when you get to the more seasoned skills, when you talk about people who need 10, 15 years of experience, the cybersecurity industry right now is not very diverse. It was far less diverse 10, 15 years ago. So, that has always been part of the focus as well.
So what sort of, success have you had in that area? If you had to say, what sort of diversity out of the 80 that you have, would that be?
Yeah, so I mean, every one of the 80 comes from a different background and different perspective, and we're very thoughtful around those backgrounds and the perspectives that they bring to the table. We're well above industry average when it comes to underrepresented groups within my team, and we're above even the Cisco average, which is above the overall average. So I feel good that we're making progress in that direction. Part of what we did,
what are you calling the industry average? Because I hear these wide ranging estimates of what.
Yeah, so if it varies a little bit. I look at the industry average and I'll use women as a sample. I think the industry average is about 20 to 25% women, so we're ahead of that curve. I didn't pull the numbers before our meeting, so I don't know off the top of my head what the numbers are, but we're doing well, but not well enough. And to me, the focus that we have is how do we help the people grow their careers so that they can be the leaders of the future, the senior tech talent of the future, the people who really understand it. Cisco does a great job at having very, very senior technical folks, the people who have, been historically the ones who said, this is how the internet should work. And now, this is how, all sorts of other things should work. That detailed technical expertise is part of our DNA as a company. And so for me, also making sure that we've got good career paths for people in our organization to become that senior tech talent as well is really, really important.
So you mentioned that you've got this diverse hybrid team, really, where a lot of people are working remote. Yep. What do you do to make sure that you've got the right collaboration across that team?
Yeah, so I think there's some things that, first of all, it is part of the DNA of us as a company and how we operate. And there's some things that I think we do that other people can really leverage when they're thinking about their environment. First and foremost, what we find retains talent and what helps people be highly engaged talent is the interactions they have with their leader. It's not actually getting in the office and talking to a lot of their colleagues and so forth. There's a place for that. When we think about what drives innovation, it's not being in the office, it's having the time to actually do it. So being able to deflect meetings off of people's calendars so they can actually have some heads down time to start thinking about things. So we're very intentional to make sure that leaders are meeting with their team one-on-one on an ongoing basis. We're also, very heavy users of WebEx Teams as a way to do real-time chatting. Also, it's really great to have a real-time group chat system when you're dealing with a global company, because it's a really convenient way for people to handle moving work between time zones. I think back to the old days of a SOC where, somebody who's handling an incident needs to have an hour overlap with someone else to be able to hand off that incident to the next time zone, and then they run with it. But when you run those sorts of things through a group chat type feature where there's a specific chat room to deal with that issue, you can see the whole history of everything that's been investigated. So some of these technologies really enable us to be effective and actually have that interaction and connection with folks. And that's really one of the things I think drives a lot. We also try to be very intentional about building culture and making sure that people are interacting and having fun. We're very much a culture where if you're, walking around, someone's kids, jumps on their lap and starts chatting, nobody's like, oh my God, what's your kid doing there? And if someone apologizes for the kid showing up, it's like, no, you don't need to apologize. It's so great to see so-and-so, it's awesome that we're having this conversation and they can be part of it as well. So that approach, and then also we leverage the flexibility of, a work from home environment. If people need to go to a doctor's appointment in the middle of the day, it's not a big deal. Like they make sure it works on their calendar, they go do it. These sorts of things really drive engagement. They drive team camaraderie and respect for each other. And it's really helped us maintain a low turnover rate in an environment where there's a lot of competition for the market. And at the same time, has made it so people are highly engaged and want to work here, and they have the ability to take care of their lives, which also helps us get diverse candidates. There are people on our team who, if they had to go in every single day into an office, they wouldn't do it, whether they've got something in their life that keeps them to the home, whether that's for whatever reason, whether they just they wouldn't do it because they don't want to. Like, that's the market we're in now.
Do you have a policy so many days a week in the office,
Nope.
or is it? Nope.
Nope.
Don't
Nope.
have that.
I've only been to the office that is closest to me once in the 3.5 years I've been here. It took me 2 hours and 45 minutes to drive down there. It was not a pleasant time. And it was just to meet with someone because we thought it would be nice to do it. I've met with that individual more frequently in trips to other cities than I have, even though we're both in the same in Southern California. So it is very much offices should be a magnet, not a mandate, is the kind of the Cisco party line on those sorts of things. And we really live that culture, and that helps us get the teams that we need to be successful.
So so big tech companies kind of have an advantage because they have a brand, and a brand is worth something.
Yep.
Companies like the company you work for, other big companies in California have that brand. So there's an automatic kind of draw. People want to get that on their resume or have that experience with that company. What do smaller companies do, or companies that aren't in that tech vertical? How, say I need a, cloud security architect or somebody, how do I compete with that? What sort of things can I do to attract that talent?
I think that so number one on the list is understand what it is that your candidates want. I'm a big fan of a concept that the HR people would tell you is called the EVP, the employee value proposition. So when you're looking to hire something, you should be able to explain what the value is to the employee to join your organization versus someone else. And things like having flexibility, things like being able to lean into the culture and the environment, the things that are exciting about your work, go actually a long way in those types of conversations. But being explicit about that in the recruiting and the hiring process, it all points during the recruiting process. Do you want to think about it from the candidate's lens? So if you're So things that candidates really don't like, and anyone who's been through a job process in their life probably knows some of these things. Like, people don't like being left sitting idle while a company makes a decision, is it A or B or C? So we try, when we're hiring people, to be very intentional. We go through a round of interviews. We try to keep that in as short of a duration of time as humanly possible to meet the candidate's expectations. Before the hybrid world, you might think about that as one day of interviews where they come into the office. In the hybrid world, you want to work around the candidate's schedule as much as you can, interview them, and then make a decision. And be transparent with them. Sorry, you're not the right candidate for this role. But make the decision and move on, because your brand as a company, particularly if you're not a big tech brand, a big brand that's going to attract people because of the cachet of the name, it becomes even more important. Security people talk to each other all the time. They know each other. They talk about potential employers, and they say, "Oh yeah, that place. You can apply for a job, but you're never going to hear back from them." That doesn't help. So be thoughtful around that. Also, if you're hiring somebody for an entry mid-level position, they don't need to talk to 10 people. Like, that's exhausting on a candidate. Be thoughtful about how you structure the interview process so that when you're interviewing them, each person is intentionally covering a different subject with just very little bit of overlap. Nothing more frustrating as a candidate than having 4 interviews and having all 4 people ask you the same set of questions, like, why did you go through those 4 interviews? So if you're thinking about things from those perspectives, those are the differentiators from a candidate's mind. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy, no matter what. And even if you have a big, tech name behind you or something like that, you still there's no employers of choice in the security industry. There's just not enough. There's not enough jobs out there, not enough candidates out there. The candidates can be very selective, and they're going to be select based on the specific position and what they're looking for. So everyone needs to lean into active recruiting and building your networks. Best candidates are often through referrals. And when we talked about building diversity in the team, we have an insistent that every single interview panel we have is diverse, and ideally diverse in multiple ways, because that's who we are as a company. But also, and then you get different perspectives on the candidate, but also having those people talking to their networks, different people, my network, and I try to connect with as many people as I can and be part of employee resource groups and talk to people from different backgrounds and different perspectives. But it's limited based on my background and experience. So the more people who are part of the recruiting process, who are advertising for that position, who have broader and more diverse networks, the easier it is to get those people in.
Is there a place that you've learned in the last few years to go and look for talent that you weren't thinking of, in your prior roles?
I think, the vast majority of recruiting these days happens and continues to happen through LinkedIn. That's pretty straightforward. Even in situations where you're having people tap their networks, there tends to be a path through LinkedIn. So if you're a candidate and you don't have a good LinkedIn profile, time to have a good LinkedIn profile. I will say that we've tried very hard to lean into the employee resource groups that we have within Cisco. Cisco's got a really good women in cybersecurity resource group, and people there are plugged into more industry consortiums and so forth. We've tried also very hard to have presence at things like Grace Hopper and other, a whole plethora of other different organizations out there, and even just encouraging people in our team to go to local security events. I mean, Todd, you and I have met through the local security community however many moons ago. Like, that's a great way to build the network, and it's a great way to find who's interested in other jobs. I've had people who I've met that way who have worked for me and continue to work for me. Like, it's just those sorts of things, important things to lean into. And I would say the other thing is also be thoughtful about being a talent exporter. Sometimes the things I look back in my career that I'm most excited about are the people who have worked for me and have gone on to do phenomenal other things and other jobs. And that's really exciting. And being able to have that conversation with folks in your team where it's like they're saying, hey, I think I need to see something different. And you're like, oh, let me see if I can make some connections for you. It pays back.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So this has been great, Larry. Tell me, what sort of advice would you give to current CISOs, emerging CISOs, experienced CISOs, new CISOs, as they're going down this journey, trying to hire a difficult skill set to find?
Yeah, I think regardless of whether you're trying to hire one person or you're trying to hire 100 people, the most important thing is to be intentional about it and to spend time actually thinking about and spend the time that you need to invested in the process. If in your priority of list of priorities, hiring is your 15th item on the list after 14 other things, you will never make progress. You've got to have it be your top priority. There's nothing more important to me in my organization when I'm hiring than hiring. And all of the hiring managers in my team know that's number one priority. They will drop anything and everything else in order to do an interview. It's a slight exaggeration. Every once in a while, something pops up that's urgent. But by and large, the intent is that comes first. partner also with your HR department, and don't expect it. When I say that, that isn't, hey, HR department, it's on you to find the right people for me for the position. It's spend the time to figure out what the processes and approach you need to do to actually attract the talent. And how do you actually get this on paper? That I made the comment earlier about employee value proposition. That's something I learned about. That's something some HR person told me. Well, what's your employee value proposition? I said, oh, what is that? And a lot of the things that they say you should do, structured, thoughtful interviews, they know how to do this. They've been doing it for decades. Like, we need to learn that skill, and we need to spend the time on it.
I think that's great advice, and I really like the part about making that time and that commitment, because I think back to my past job interviews, and I think companies sometimes forget that it's not just the company that's recruiting the employee. The employee is evaluating the company at every step of that recruiting process and determining whether they really want to work there.
Yeah.
And so I think that's fantastic advice.
Yeah, for a variety of the positions in our organization, one of the interviewer personas we have is the person doing the pitch. Like, they may have some other questions they interview. Maybe they're doing two different things, but part of what they're doing is specifically, here's why you should come work for us. And that's very intentional, because to your point, they're interviewing us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been great, Larry. Thanks a lot. Thanks for taking the time today.
Thank you for having me. Great conversation. Really, really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in for this week's episode of the CISO Stories podcast. We want to say a special thank you to Darktrace, our diamond sponsor. Please subscribe to the CISO Stories podcast, and you will receive a new story each Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We'll see you next week for a new episode.